How could you be, sir? I should have left well enough alone, but I continued with a haughty attitude. Jesus turned to me and said, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat, but I've prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And when you've turned back, strengthen your brothers. I didn't catch his conclusion that I would fail of being sifted. I boasted, Lord, I'm ready to go with you to prison and to death. He looked at me with sad eyes and said, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. Jesus continued to talk to us for a long time, just as John reported in his gospel account. While continuing to teach us, Jesus led us across the Kidron Valley and off the side of the Mount of Olives to a place known as Gethsemane. After a while, Jesus separated himself from us and prayed to God. He'd often done this, so we didn't think much of it, until he asked James, John, and me to keep watch with him. He felt so sorry for us because we could not even stay awake during this time of extreme danger. Instead of sleep, a crowd of men with torches appeared out of nowhere and came toward Jesus. Judas was with the crowd, walked toward Jesus as if to kiss him and greet him. Jesus said, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? I grabbed the sword, hacked toward the nearest person to me, cut off a man's right ear. I had just woken up. I wasn't thinking clearly, just reacting. Now, I was completely in a panic. I saw that the crowd consisted of soldiers and the temple guard, probably sent by the chief priests, elders, and other Jewish officials. They seized Jesus, started walking him down the hills. We apostles scattered every direction. From my vantage point, I could see that the torches were headed toward the house of the high priest. I stumbled down the path in the dark, able to stay a short distance from the crowd. As they went into the house, I came from the backside, and I sat near the fire in the courtyard, trying hard to keep my face hidden. Then this girl came up to me. This man was also with him. It was a servant girl accusing me of being a follower of Jesus. I, of course, denied it. My accent, my clothes gave me away. I denied my Lord. The mere words of the servant. Twice more I was accused of being a follower of Jesus, and twice more I denied it. At the exact moment of my third denial, a rooster crowed, and Jesus turned and looked straight at me. And I remembered what he had said to me. And I went away and wept bitterly. In the distance, I could hear them insulting Jesus and beating him.
I had been prefect of the Roman province of Judea, an area otherwise known as Palestine, near Israel. As a representative of Emperor Tiberius, I was Rome, the eternal city. I had total power and control over the province, even the power of life or death. I took a large group of Roman soldiers and made a 70-mile uphill, dusty trip to Jerusalem, where to stay for a few weeks. Most of the soldiers stayed after having, well, a little bit too much to drink the night before. My attendant taps on my door. I answer, and he motions for me to step away and stop me with my wife. He tells me that a group of Jewish leaders are waiting frantically to talk to me. Things that he's saying that sound odd, but he wants to make sure that we don't unintentionally set off a riot by ignoring them. The leader of the assembled religious brass points to a bloody man and says, "We found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar. He claims to be Messiah, King." Now, at this point, I didn't really care about what they had to say. The man that they were pointing to was so badly beaten that he clearly posed no threat to me or the empire. The charges weren't even worthy of my time. So I sarcastically asked the poor man, "Are you the king of the Jews?" I knew that Herod was the king of the Jews. "You have said so," the man replied. Not a bad answer, I had to say so myself. I just laughed, and I announced to the crowd, "I find no basis for any charge against this man." I turned to leave the crowd, and that's when the leader was frantically scrambling to find another charge. He stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee, and has come all the way here. And the leader thought he got my attention by insinuating that this poor wretch might be causing some kind of an insurrection. He got my attention in a whole other way instead. He mentioned that the man was from Galilee, and that he was under the authority of Herod. Conveniently, Herod was only a few hundred yards away. Herod would have to deal with the problem that had no good solution. He was either going to break one of the laws or discipline Jewish leaders and possibly cause a riot. Either way, I wanted to make Herod's life miserable. He was a pathetic, sad little man. It was an easy choice for me. So I sent the crowd and a wretched prisoner to Herod, laying next to him. Now, imagine my surprise when a few hours later when the crowd appeared and demanded to see me again. What had happened? I asked my assistant. He gave me the short version. Apparently, Herod was actually happy to see this man because he had heard of him and wanted to see him perform some great miracle. When the man just stood there, Herod eventually tired of his silence and had his soldiers ridicule him. He came to a pulpit and dressed him in a purple robe that signified his supposed royalty. Then, in a sign of deference to me, Herod sent him back for my judgment. As the poor man stood there, weeping from fatigue and pain, I could easily see this was not a legal case, some kind of religious dispute. I was in a no-win situation. I was frantically searching for a way out. My first attempt was a scheme to tell the crowd that Herod and I both found no guilt in the man, and I would punish him for releasing him. Rather than appeasing the crowd, this just made them more furious. The religious leaders were working the crowd into a frenzy, and a riot was sure to break out soon. My second tactic was it, and really to give the crowd a choice to release the man, or release a murderer, a revolutionary by the name of Barabbas. It was my custom to release someone in the Passover, and I was sure that the crowd would not choose. Much to my surprise, the day of the release of Barabbas would not listen to my reasoning. Crucify him, they said. They had me in the word, and they both knew it, both the religious leaders and the crowd. I appealed again to them, but on the verge of a riot, they kept shouting, "Crucify him, crucify him, crucify him." Their shouts prevailed. I released Barabbas, and I gave the prisoner to the crowd, which was a tacit approval for him to be crucified. Hours later, my centurion brought his report. The innocent man's name was Jesus. He was so fatigued that he could not carry his cross all the way up the hill of death. So my centurion seized someone from the crowd and had it carried for him. The centurion was surprised by the large number of people who supported Jesus and followed them. But they were mostly women, or men who posed no obvious problem. With typical Roman efficiency, my soldiers took along 2 other men who were scheduled to be executed. All 3 of them were crucified on the rock. Jesus took place in the middle. As was often done, soldiers gambled against one another to claim the even though he was a king. The only one in the crowd who treated him with respect, one of the other crucified prisoners. It was about noon when a deep darkness, like a storm, but worse, it came over the entire region. It lasted for about 3 hours. The Jews, ever superstitious, were reminded by the plague of darkness when they were slaves in Egypt. They were starting to regret their actions. The enormous temple curtain was torn from top to bottom, and the Jews were ballistic. Jesus called out, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." It had taken only a few hours for him to die, when often it takes several days. My centurion said he was amazed and deeply moved. He said that he praised the Jews' God and said that surely this was a righteous man. No sooner had the centurion finished his report than my assistant came to me with another urgent request. A wealthy Jew named Joseph had come to ask for the body of Jesus so that he could bury it. He was in a hurry. He said that he wanted to wrap the body in linen and place it in a tomb from the Sabbath started. Honestly, I was thrilled to have this unexpected request. Usually we Romans leave crucified bodies in place for a long time. It's a powerful reminder. However, since this Jesus had so many followers, I didn't want the body to be motivation for them to unite or to rebel or to make some secret murder of him. Having the body disappear was a good solution to a potential problem. So I granted Joseph permission. That was the end of the matter. At least, it was as far as I expected.
As it turned out, the end was only the beginning.
So, what did you think? Peter and Pilate never exactly thought of joining those two figures in our treatments of Holy Week. One, they seem to be so very opposite. One of them a follower of Jesus, another just someone looking to make a problem go away. So what did you think? What struck you? Anything in particular? I'm going to go around the tables first, Nicolette. But don't you worry, you'll be there. Oh, okay, Nicolette. Go ahead. What struck you?
I got mad at Pontius Pilate because he said, "Oh, the good solution to have the body disappear." He made me mad when he said that.
Mm-hmm. What do you think made you so mad?
Because Pilate really didn't care one way or the other what happened to Jesus. It was like not his problem. He just got rid of him for humoring what do you call them, the religious leaders. He didn't want to riot, that's all. But he didn't care about the truth.
In fact, in John's Gospel, he says, "What is truth?" I always wish it said, "What is truth?" anyway. He's sort of the perfect politician, don't you think? Just make the problem go away. The political calculus is what matters. He was in the midst of a revolutionary setting where he could end up being recalled to Rome. In fact, several years later he was, and exiled off to an island because he ran afoul of the politics of the empire. So, yeah, who cares what truth is? I just have a problem. I need to make it go away. Yeah. Yes, Pat.
I guess I have a little bit of an alternative view to that, because it sort of made him at least show a grain of compassion when he saw how, how badly they had beat him up, and he was such a pathetic figure. And I thought, yeah, it was political, but on the other hand, thought the depiction anyway showed a little bit of humanity on his part.
Yeah, there are references to Pontius Pilate in the Gospels, obviously. The one that I find most striking happens to be in Matthew, and we're in the year of Matthew, and on Good Friday, one of the things we're going to hear is Pilate's wife sending a message to him that says, "Have nothing to do with this innocent man, because I was kept awake by a vision, by a nightmare concerning him." And I've always thought, what an interesting detail. It's only in that one of the four Gospels where it is, if nobody else can get through to Pilate, Mrs. Pilate. If he had only listened.
Always listen to your wife.
Yeah. So this is my political calculus. There are more of you women than men in the group, so he didn't listen to his wife. That was his problem. That's right. Make sure to tell Sharon I said that. Okay. So other thoughts, other things. You had two very different testimonials, but they bottom lined at the same point, which was breaking faith with Jesus, letting one's, whether it was the calculus of the moment or whether it was just raw fear or cowardice, there it was. Yes, Dawn.
I think once Peter starts denying, he goes, what did I just do? It's like, I denied him to a slave girl, like, who's she?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, I've been with him forever, and it's like, I deny him to a slave girl. Because, like, you get an eyeball and go, great.
Yeah.
What did I just do?
Yeah, and it's in all of the stories of this, it is the crowing of the rooster, which, by the way, being a city kid, I never understood the crowing of the rooster until I found myself in Honduras on a communicators trip, way up in the boondocks of the boondocks. And at 3 a.m, the rooster started. Still dark, the rooster started. I've told some of you that story. There were 3 roosters in that neighborhood. The first rooster, the second rooster, the third rooster. And it just happened for like an hour, 2 hours. And so the harbinger of the dawn is the rooster crow. So it's not just the sort of the symbolism of the rooster announcing to Peter that he has fulfilled this dire, sad prophecy, but also it moves the story from the night of his betrayal on the Mount of Olives to what is going to come next, which is dawn will be breaking. How do you know? Because the roosters are crowing. And I think that's really what Jesus was saying. In other words, before the alarm clock goes off, before morning comes, you will fail me 3 times. Yeah. Please, Patrick.
I'm never sure, what was Peter afraid of? Was he going to be arrested and crucified? Being a follower and doing everything he had done for the recent past. What was he afraid of?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this question, because let's remember, Peter puts himself in the danger spot. He could have just headed off to some darkened area on the Mount of Olives and hidden out to come back together again with the other apostles to try to somehow plan some kind of a response. What do we do now? He was the leader, after all. Instead, he follows, and the Gospels are in agreement. This was a really good part of the monologue. He sees the torches going toward the residence of Caiaphas, the high priest, and he reasons that that's where they're going to take Jesus. And in fact, that's what they did. In fact, if you go to Jerusalem today, they believe that they have found the residence of Caiaphas or of some high muckamuck of the Sanhedrin, and there is a spot there in the basement of that residence. To this day, there are people who sing the Psalms every day down there in fidelity to Jesus because it's a dungeon. and it may have been the dungeon in which Jesus was placed until he could be summoned before Caiaphas and this religious court. So Peter goes to the outside area, outside of Caiaphas's residence. Why? Does he think, I got to find out what's going to happen? What are they going to do to my Lord? He could have just headed for the hills. But something brings him into that courtyard. And that's what causes the revelation. There he is, as you heard the actor say, it was his accent and his clothing. You know, he's not from around here. And that's why sometimes as a New Yorker, I've tended to imagine Peter when the woman says, "You are certainly one of them because your accent gives you away." And then Peter in response says, "I don't know what you're talking about." "I'm just from here, just like you." You know, but so who knows what it is, what the accent of the Galilean as opposed to the Judean might have been. But that is what gives him away. The question would be, not only what does he think he could accomplish there, which could just be, I have to be near him. Remember, he is the one who slices off the right ear of one of those who participated in the arrest. Could it just be fear? Raw fear and cowardice, because now he is surrounded by all of these people, and the next thing you know, he's going to be captured himself. He can't do Jesus any good, can he? Ending up on the next crossover. So something takes over in him, his fear, his cowardice, his failure. And there's a unique moment, only in one of the Gospels, in Luke's Gospel, where, and I don't really understand the choreography of this, but he says for the third time, with some colorful language, according to at least some of the testaments, I don't know I blankety blank don't know the man. And the rooster crows, and Luke's Gospel says, at that moment, Jesus turned and looked at him. Now, how in the world did that happen? Could it have been that they are transporting Jesus from that dungeon to the area of the trial where Jesus' adversaries are waiting to cook up a conviction? Well, what we know is they come eye to eye. I mean, the deep sort of drama of that moment is never more sharp, I think, than in Luke's telling. Because it isn't just the rooster, and Peter says, "Oh, I did it. I did exactly what he said I would do." And he goes off and weeps bitterly. But in Luke's version, he said, "I never met the man," and he looks up, and many great artists of every generation have painted that moment. But I wonder if you were the artist, the painter, what would you see on Jesus' face? I mean, I think we could all figure out what we would see on Peter's face, which would be just the savage realization that one has failed and fallen and been someone who has broken ranks with his Lord, his master, his rabbi. But what do you think was on Jesus' face? I wonder. Sadness.
Love.
Disappointment.
But love for Peter, too.
Oh, love, yeah. The one thing I think we wouldn't expect to see on Jesus' face, although any of us might have done it, would be, "I told you so."
Yeah.
That isn't there. I believe what is there is love. Pure love. Because remember, Jesus doesn't just predict Peter's failure. He says, when you have recovered, strengthen your kinfolk. So there is even in the midst of that Oh, really? You're ready to go to prison and to death with me? There is a word of grace. There will be a next chapter when you have recovered. When, not if. So, yeah, please, go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say the statement about Jesus looked right at me, because when I grew up, I kind of had that same feeling, not with Jesus, but with my dad. And my dad ruled with an iron fist and pulled the belt out and disciplined me and all that kind of stuff. And I did something wrong. Like, it wasn't very good. And after I got brought home by another parent, I walked in and I had fear. I'm sure that when you heard, I'm sure when you heard the crow, for the third time, he had fear. Well, I had fear when I walked in the house. And then he looked at me, my dad, from the hallway, and he said, I can't tell you how disappointed I am. And that was it. I never got spanked. I never got in. And that was, I'll never forget.
Please spank me.
One of the,
Yeah.
I felt so much disappointment that I let him down.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, that he's
Yeah, something in that look of disappointment. Yeah. Yeah. It is one of the most complex moments, I think, and it says something about Luke, the writer, almost Luke, the dramatist. I have felt really for years that, and there is some research that backs this up, that Luke's telling of the Passion story may have been influenced by some of Greco-Roman drama and theater arts, because there is a way in which it lives out. You know, you're just stuck with that moment, aren't you? To get away from it, because it isn't just the sound of a rooster and the remorse that Peter feels. It's something bigger, deeper. It's, yes, yeah. What's worse, the paddling or I'm so disappointed in you. I know. I've been both the recipient and the dealer of those words. And my boys have told me that, Dad, you were never worse than at those moments, because then you're just left with what's the one thing you want is to be someone who your authority figure would be proud of and not ashamed of. Yeah. Yeah, Richard.
I'm going to get in trouble for asking this, but
Oh, risk it.
okay, this was preordained, predicted by Jesus, told us what's going to happen. Did these people really have free choice? Free will?
Okay, Richard, go. No, okay. It's a great question. It's a great question. Yeah, is there really free will here? I mean, or is it preordained? This is the way it's going to be. There's something about the foreknowledge of Jesus that, and you're not the first one to ask this question, Richard, because people have said, for example, Judas. If Judas doesn't do what Judas does, the story doesn't move forward. Good Friday doesn't happen. There is no, into your hands I commend my spirit. There is no, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. So in a certain way, Judas participates in the Passion story. Where I think I end up, and where I think many end up, is there's a difference between knowing what people will do, so they become kind of robotic automatons, and simply knowing the people so deeply and being a prophet in the sense of, I know what's going to happen. In fact, another question would be, Jesus knows what's going to happen, all of it, and yet goes to his knees in the Garden of Gethsemane and pleads to be spared. So is what we're seeing in that moment the conjoining of truly human and truly divine, a real flesh and blood person. We talked about this in our Bible studies. One of the earliest heresies in the Christian experience was a heresy called Docetism. It comes from the word in Greek, dokein, which means to seem to be. Well, it was among some of those who were Jesus followers who just could not put Jesus' divinity and his humanity together. They just don't fit. So either you ended up with Jesus, who was a wonderful person, and we should all try to be more like him, which was what Thomas Jefferson thought. Not the Son of the living God, but a great teacher, and we should emulate. Or the Docetists who said, Jesus on the cross is not fully human, not experiencing the full depth of his death. Almost as if you could imagine Jesus saying, wow, if I was really fully human, this would hurt. And it's much deeper than that. But the idea that Jesus knows Peter. So yes, he knows what's going to happen, but that foreknowledge does not make a robot out of Peter where he has no choice. He simply lives up or down to his Savior's expectations. And I think for all of us, the devil made me do it. Boy, isn't that a great cop-out when we don't want to own our own failures and our own cowardice and all of the rest that goes with it. Yes. Please, Jen.
Was Barabbas then
Barabbas.
part of that?
Yeah. So a little bit of a PS on Barabbas. His name, Jesus Barabbas, literally translated would be Jesus, the Son of the Fathers. Doesn't that sound an awful lot like Jesus, the Son of God? I think it's at least possible that a part of what happened on that sad Friday morning was people who didn't even know which Jesus they were calling for. That same name. I mean, it wasn't even James and John. I mean, it's Jesus, son of who? Yeah, Son of the Father, Son of God. More importantly, if I was going to stack someone else next to Jesus of Nazareth in the hopes that that person would be delivered, I would want to be smarter than Pontius Pilate. Because who does he stand up next to Jesus? A revolutionary. Somebody who is a freedom fighter to set us free from the hideous overlords from Rome. Now, Pontius Pilate may hate his guts, but I'm sure there were plenty of people in and around Jerusalem who would look at Barabbas as a hero. He's one of those. He's not going to try to pray our way out of our captivity to Rome. He's going to do something about it. It's a take charge guy. What do you think? Is that terribly far from what might have been on the minds of some of those people in the crowd? Who are you going to set free to cause more trouble for Rome? This Jesus from Galilee? Or a take charge guy like Jesus, Son of the Fathers, who is willing to take up arms against the evil empire? Who's going to be your Luke Skywalker? Yeah. So there's a lot more going on in that part of the story than we might see at face value. Does that help, Richard? I mean, those are really big questions. Can you blame Judas for playing his part? And of course, the devil did make him do it, according to John's Gospel. Laura, and then Nicolette.
I was reminding me of the difference between Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. There's Martin Luther King's way, and there's Malcolm X's way, as far as fighting for it.
Yeah, and the impatience of many within the civil rights community that nonviolent protestation is not a strong enough approach in the face of what they were facing. Yeah.
They wanted something
Yeah, absolutely. Mohandas Gandhi certainly espoused all of this, and what happened to him? And right on down the line. Absolutely. You bet. Yeah, Barabbas would have had. I think he would. I think he would have had a following. May we just say we actually know that people like Barabbas had a following during that entire period. The temple was destroyed in AD 70 because in the late 60s AD there was a violent revolt. People like Barabbas trying to kick the Romans out of Jerusalem. So down comes the Roman troops, and there goes the temple, because they knew how to deal with an insurrection. Firmly, strongly, decisively. Yeah, and they had plenty of soldiers to do it. Yeah. Nicolette.
My take on what happened, God planned all of this to save us. It's His plan. And I've learned in my life that when God wants something, God is going to get His way no matter what. So He sets this up in motion Himself, so that I don't think people even realize they have choice or not choice. It's God's plan that you're going to do this and you will do it, and He's going to do this and that, and it just happens that way because that's the way God's decided it's going to happen and who's going to do what.
Right.
So I don't think it's a matter of free will or anything. I think it's God putting it in their hearts and in their brains to do what they need to do to get done what God wants done.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. And let's not forget 3 times, according to the majority of the Gospels, 3 times Jesus tells in ever more detail, this is what is going to happen. And Peter, you could ask yourself, what is it that brings Jesus to make the statement to Peter that he makes? He says, when you've recovered, strengthen your brothers, your kinfolk. And Peter says, and lets his inner braggart out, this must never happen to you. I'll be there with you. I'm willing to go to prison and to death with and for you. And then Jesus has to look at him with love and sort of correct his bragging and give him a reality check that he will live up to. Yeah. And I'm sure no one was more surprised than him. There are many people who've asked many of the same questions about Judas. And I can't forget, if you're looking for the repentant sinner who not only regrets what he has done, but repents of it and seeks somehow to undo it and redress it, it's Judas, who goes back to the high priest and what he thinks he's going to be able to accomplish. But the word repent is literally attached to Judas, certainly in the gospel according to Matthew. Yeah. I'm sorry, I saw another hand.
It's gone.
Okay, got it. Yes, Tom, please.
I have to say, in defense of Peter, Jesus' ministry was 3 years. How long does it take to get to know a person well?
Yeah.
A lifetime.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think in the case of Jesus and Peter, Jesus sees both his tremendous promise. He calls him, you are Rocky. Now we could look at the word Rocky in different ways. We could look at it as an adjective. You're a Rocky guy. Yeah. Especially between the ears. Yeah. So feet of clay, but also let me walk to you on the surface of the water. And all of that in both the potential and the Achilles heel of this great follower. Yeah. Who, Jesus knows. And by the way, for any of us who have thought, well, I know I should really speak of my faith and I should really witness to it, and I'm really called, all of us are called to be witnesses and evangelists, but I'm no Peter. or Judas or any of the others. I think on one level, what the Gospels are trying to tell us is it's normal people, warts and all people, just like you and me, who carry the word forward and change the world, given the gift of the Holy Spirit, but they don't stop being who they are, which is imperfect saints. Peter continues to make mistakes. Look in the book of Acts at the number of times he blows it, because he is on a pathway of growing and he has to go through his various moments of failure, of myopia, of not seeing the value of other people, not really hearing the fullness of the gospel. You know, like you and me. I will just share with you once again, looking at a thumbnail biography of John Newton, who wrote Amazing Grace, right? I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. We're going to have that story from the gospel on Sunday. John Newton was the pilot of a slave ship, conveying slaves in the hold stacked up like wood to the places where they would be enslaved. Then he gets faith in a windstorm, in an ocean storm, and comes to faith. And that story would be so nifty if he turned in his license and no longer sailed a slave ship. But for a number of years afterward, he continued in that job. A reformed, transformed Christian who didn't quite see that conveying people to be treated like animals or property would be a bad thing. Until he, believe it or not, until he went to seminary. That's not the bottom line of the story, but later on in life began to be confronted with that aspect of his sin and how he had participated in a sinful institution. And he became a part of the lobbying work that led to Great Britain outlawing slavery some 50 years prior to this country, outlawing slavery. And John Newton was a big piece of it, just not at the time that he got saved. Getting saved doesn't change everything. It doesn't change our biases. It doesn't change a lot of the old Adam in us. And I think Peter, although he receives the Holy Spirit on Pentecost, along with the others, still has a lot of growing to do, just like you and me. A lot of ways that our boundaries need to be expanded and broadened and widened. And every time we think, okay, this far but no farther, we have God going, no, there's more. I promise, there's more. So I don't know, any other concluding thoughts before we wrap up? Nicolette, what a shock.
There are just two little tiny things that Peter said that struck me. One, he says that the silver that Judas got was a pittance, was nothing. And I never thought of that, because I've always kind of thought silver was good stuff. But then that one kind of got me. And the other one was that men don't usually carry the water.
Oh, yeah.
That was like, I never even thought about that. And that's who they saw, the man carrying the water, but that was not normal.
It wasn't normal at all. You notice there are no men in our story from last Sunday with their water jugs.
Yeah.
Right? It was considered a part of the domestic authority, which both in Roman culture and in Palestinian culture, Galilean and Judean culture, would have been the province of the woman. It's a mistake to see that automatically as a kind of an enslavement. But the idea there was, heck, I was born in the 50s. Dad went and got on the subway, Mom ran the house. And she ran it front to back. That was just what I knew. That was my world, until everybody had to start working, for jobs just because of the world. In first century Palestine, a part of the running of the household was the providing of drinking water and washing water. And so that was a task that was ordinarily understood to be, woman's work. So how brilliant is Jesus where he says, when the disciples want to know, where are we going to have the Passover? He'll say, well, you'll see this guy. And he'll have a jar on his head. Or in his hands. And that will tell you right away, because he is not doing the expected thing. That's the where's Waldo for you. That's how you'll know where you go next. Yeah. Yes?
And going to the morning thing.
Yes, it was.
It was a morning thing because the water was cold, pure, animals hadn't come by and eaten it lately.
Yeah? And who wants to be lugging what would have been really heavy in the heat of the day? In a part of the world that we all know where it gets hot at noon.
Men would head out to look for work or go to their fields.
Right.
The women would go get water.
Right. And they would be back at home, presumably before the heat became an issue. The fact that the woman at the well is the woman at the well at noon tells you how marginalized she is. That the other women of Sychar know her resume. And she does not go with the other women at 7:30 a.m. Or at daybreak, which would have been around 6. She has to go 6 hours later after all the good people have filled up their vessels and returned home.
She's independent.
What's that?
She's independent.
Well, you could look at it that way. I think I would prefer to say she's been around. And that's at least their conclusion. Although, as I said on Sunday, it could have also been because she was unable to conceive that she had a short shelf life in the minds of the men who had married her. All kinds of reasons why. And it's not necessarily a very modern kind of approach where we say she slept around. But that's a possibility, but it's not the only possibility. It is also likely that she was an independent thinker. And we don't want too many of them around because it might start
Too independent.
Yes, please, Kathy.
What struck me is when Peter, back to the slave girl making a comment to him. Interesting, number one, it was a slave girl. And interesting the way he characterized it. This is such a small thing. It was just a slave girl who said this to me, and I didn't stand up for Jesus. Which kind of made me think too, opportunities in our life. Maybe it's a small thing, which way are we going to go? And so his humanity in all this, he saw Jesus. He knew Jesus. And still denied.
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad it has a happy ending this year, because that's a happy ending for all of us.
That's right. And wouldn't it be interesting if a piece of what made him into the disciple and apostle and leader that he became was that moment of having feet of clay? I will confess to you that it's always troubled me that nowhere in the New Testament does Peter have his come to Jesus meeting except at the end of John's Gospel, where they go up to Galilee, let's go fishing, and Jesus then sits with Peter as they're having their breakfast of fish and bread and says, Simon Johnson, do you love me? And 3 times the rooster crows, 3 times Jesus challenges the faith of the rock man. Yeah. Maybe that's as close as we're going to get. But wouldn't you think on Pentecost morning, when Peter stands up with the 11, that he doesn't say, now listen, I had feet of clay too. I blew it. I screwed up too. So this is just one sinner talking out that he doesn't do that. Maybe he just can't stop being Peter. But we are given the story, and I do think that it's meant to be instructive. That in the eyes of Jesus, looking on this beloved disciple, we get all the emotions, all the disappointment, all the I love you, all, it's the way it had to be, my friend. Okay, you failed. Maybe you needed to, so that you would understand that I place the mission of the saints into the hands of the sinners. Just like today, you know? Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. And we'll see you next week. God willing. Initials for next week.
It just pops into my head every time somebody says something. Says that.
Oh, okay. The reason I'm asking this, my daughter went to school with a Catholic school. These are good. They're